I've ranked every weapon in Cyberpunk 2077 on this channel, but now it's time to rank the weapon classes overall. With different perk trees often only improving on one or two weapon types specifically, the game can somewhat limit how many weapons you can fully make use of. Therefore, it's worth understanding how each weapon type generally performs before irreversibly allocating all of those attributes. So sit back, relax, and let's discuss. Down at the bottom then, this one wasn't too tough to place, and I'm not saying definitively not to use them ever, but precision rifles occupy this awkward bridge between assault rifles and snipers, and in some sense leans into the worst of both of those guns. All firing single shots with something of a gap between them, losing out on the speed and automaticness of many of the assault rifles, but being far weaker than their sniper cousins. Basically, whether you're at mid or close range, there's not gonna be many fights you can't win better with another type of gun. Plus, there's not a huge amount of choice with these. Just 4 different models, all with small merits of their own, but still suffering with the basic drawback of being way weaker than snipers. Take Hypercritical, the best of the bunch in my very humble, very extensively researched opinion. It's got a nice punch to it, and I have a lot of fun with this gun, but it still demands pinpoint accuracy despite only having iron sights. And whilst landing many one-shot kills, that isn't always a given. Then we have the tech variants, Achilles and Widowmaker. Both, again, basically weak iron sight snipers that are admittedly a lot more friendly to run and gun style play. Decent choices for advancing through the tighter enemy bases present across much of the main story, but beaten there, I would say, by the likes of pistols and shotguns. This all said, they do use the heavy ammo type rather than sniper ammo, and they do benefit from the same perks as snipers, making them an excellent backup gun if you run out of sniping ammo, but otherwise a weaker choice overall. Next up, a weapon type with a lot of potential, but that also mostly suffers from a lack of choice. LMGs have 4 models, but only really 2 designs. The faster but weaker defender, or the slower, stronger, and more explosive MA-70 HB, and both lean into much a similar type of build. A tank who can basically stand there spraying endless amounts of lead and wreak total havoc. Though, the lack of variance will probably make for a more boring playthrough, with discovering a new gun in this class pretty rare. They do share many perks with shotguns at least, and I would recommend probably combining LMGs in with a shotty build, but by themselves they're just fairly limited, and also utterly devour ammo. We can hold about 1,000 rounds of heavy ammunition maximum, can restock from stashes and enemies save for law enforcement, and can craft more when out of combat. But even then, hearing that fateful click is still possible. That all said, it is very effective at fighting against hordes of law enforcement up to that point. Assault rifles. Not a weak set of weapons by any means, and their placement here is testament to just how well CDPR balanced their gun classes across the board. But I think overall, these suffer from generally being a weaker gun, and this kind of operates on a scale. At one end, you have your very speedy, automatic pea shooter, like the Umbra, that can still function as a beam rifle if you get the recoil down, explained in this video, whilst at the other end, you're leaning more towards precision rifles. Indeed, the difference between the QB-AR and SOR-22 precision rifle isn't all that big, though despite its more punchy, semi-automatic nature, the QB doesn't do a ton of damage compared to other single-shot weapons, and definitely doesn't hold up in stealth like, say, pistols. There are some really cool models with unique abilities. Shots from Rosalind Meyer's Hawk apply a ton of debuffs to anyone they hit, whilst the Hercules 3AX is the type of crazy tactician gun we could have seen more with from LMGs. Prejudice is also great, probably the best classic feeling assault rifle in the game, but unfortunately we don't get that until one of the endings, the Sun. So whilst there are a number of creative iconics, I'd say they don't stand out as much as some of the other classes. And on the whole, if you just use this set of weapons, your experience of Night City may feel a little more boring than some of the alternatives. With no tech-based models and just 2 variants of the smart guns, there's not really many strong entries to offer an authentic Cyberpunk experience. But if you're happy for the game to feel just like a bog-standard shooter, then by all means, prioritize these. You can always mix it up with SMGs too, as they share the same reflex perks. Revolvers are kind of a difficult one in 2.0. Do they make you feel like a badass gunslinger still? Yes. Are they as powerful as they were pre-2.0? No. And the reason for that is that they no longer support silencers. If you go back and watch my Secrets of the Gig series, I filmed pretty much all of that stealthing around with a silenced overture. But now, if you want to go stealthy with revolvers, you only have one choice, Mancinea, which itself isn't unlocked until you reach the Run This Town side quest in the final act of Phantom Liberty. Prior to that, you're gonna have to stick with pistols, which segments revolvers more into open combat builds. Not really a problem later in the game when you're a total bullet sponge, but earlier, when you're having to carefully drop enemies one at a time, sweat dripping off your forehead, knowing full well that one wrong move will bring down a horde whom you simply can't survive, yeah, revolvers ain't gonna cut it. Once you do become powerful and brave enough to show your face in a fight though, revolvers still demand a lot from you as a player. The pinpoint accuracy of a cowboy, mostly, with a powerful shot, hefty recoil, and no smart models for assistance whatsoever. They can be trickier to use and much less forgiving if you miss. But if you simply follow the constructive and very informative advice of get good scrub, then I'm sure you'll have a whale of a time. Most of the models are Overture variants, which is essentially a Magnum, but there's also the Quasar, which can fire fully automatically through walls and is very overpowered, or if you just want an explosive hand cannon that can also launch bikes into the air, Leica and Comrade's hammer are decent too, though after losing its ability to penetrate walls, the hammer isn't the GOAT of the game anymore, as it was in 1.6. Now it's far from it. Overall, they're the flashier cousin of pistols, which can't actually do as much. Luckily, they share a perk set though, so no worries about comboing them. An alternative great option for stealth in the game, throwing weapons have a lot of merits. Namely, the fact that they always return after a set time, meaning there's never any fear of running out of ammo. And if you take, say, one specialist iconic throwing weapon and back up the other two slots with punk knives, you should never run out of things to throw, because they return so quickly. Of course, this class doesn't just include throwing knives anymore. Tomahawks and axes too are much more badass feeling alternatives, though they do take longer to return. And models like Agao, while sporting one of the most awesome lightning effects in game, is more a weapon for open combat rather than stealthy espionage, which most of the class lends itself to. There's an entire perk tree dedicated specifically to these weapons in the cool attributes, and a big synergy that unlocks that works great with many of these weapons is poison. The neurotoxin knife and stinger apply poison automatically, but the scorpion sting perk unlocks this effect for all of the throwing weapons. And I actually found that whilst the knives couldn't one-shot as well as a pistol, say, the extra poison damage did often finish off an otherwise just too weak throw. There's also a ton of iconics in this class with creative, unique abilities. Agao, as mentioned, but I'm also a huge fan of Fang, that pins enemies in place with leg shots, which actually means for once in my life I'm not aiming for the head, but of course there's a knife especially for that too, with Headhunter, which increases the damage of subsequent headshots by 200%. Like I say, there's some creative weapons in here, though despite all that, they still don't quite reach the same insane power levels as some of the other classes, especially outside of stealth, which I know is totally crazy, but that's just what happens in a world of futuristic tech. Blunt weapons. Not many of you seem to like these, judging from the viewership metrics these videos got compared to many of the rest, but these weapons are not only numerous throughout the game, they're also a seriously strong entry, which go hand in hand with speccing into a seriously strong build. Literally, they occupy a tree under the body attributes right next to the one with all the health regen buffs. Plus, unlocking the Quake perk means we can do a literal superhero landing into the middle of combat with any one of these weapons. I mean, what's not to love? Okay, fine, I guess the entire set here can feel a little more samey than other weapon types, always boiling down to the simple caveman tactic of bludgeon to death, but there's still flavors of bludgeoning. The Half-Life bludgeon with a crowbar, Bludgeon 2 Electric Boogaloo, which can instantly kill if you're using the Tinkerbell model, or there's constantly recreating the Negan entrance from The Walking Dead, or recreating the scene where Mr. Miyagi hammers a nail with one hit from Karate Kid 2, I believe. But I would argue argue the best form of bludgeoning in terms of OPness is of course with Sir John Fallostiff or the longer and harder BFC 9000. Both absolute masters in fucking people up, literally. Overall, there's a lot to love about this weapon class, and comboing it with a Berserk can make for an alternative solo build that I think many people overlook. Though even I can't deny that bludgeoning, however many which ways we can do it, can start to get boring after a while, which is why many of the upcoming alternatives are ranked higher. ARM Cyberware really is all you need in Cyberpunk 2077, though that wouldn't make for a very varied playthrough, admittedly. That said, there's really no harm in sporting one of these ARM Cyberwares. They occupy their own separate weapon slots, and each of the four got a crazy unique ability available with the Relic Tree in Phantom Liberty. With Gorilla Arms basically able to charge up and supersonic punch people, Monowire able to administer a Quickhacks simply with a strong attack, then Mantis Blades can leap 30 meters to a target, and projectiles can overload to fire in bursts of 5, something that is particularly effective in fights involving vehicles, since a full burst can blow up pretty much any of those. There's also no real secret or specific unlock point to get any of these. All you need to do is reach level 10, and their tier 2 variants will be available at Rippers. If you're not planning on using any of them, then I'd say at least just equip Gorilla Arms, since they lower our strength requirements for doors and can help for beat on the brat too. Otherwise, they're probably best used as supports for a more fleshed out build. Say projectiles with LMGs, Monowire for net running, or Gorillas/Mantises for when we run out of ammo. But again, they are powerful enough to stand on their own if you so wish, so give them a go if you haven't already. You've got nothing to lose in doing so, save for the down payment at the Ripper Dock. They may be like a weaker alternative to assault rifles, but SMGs score higher in my opinion due to their far stronger roster of unique iconics. SMGs arguably have the highest number of interesting individual weapons in Cyberpunk, so whilst some models may be very bog standard, you can still have a really interesting and varied playthrough purely by sticking to this class of gun. If you're playing as a netrunner especially, you can probably buff this up a couple more spots, because SMGs have some amazing smart weapon entries that only really come into their own with an appropriate cyberdeck build. I go over multiple variants like the Net Gunner and Crowd Killer in this video if you want a more in-depth analysis. But essentially, the Shingen Mark V and Yinglong get transformed from okay but slightly weak weapons into demonic entities of fire and lightning respectively in a Netrunner build. Besides that, there's Raiju in the tech corner, which goes through cover without even having to charge, and in the power corner we have the likes of the Xmod 2 Guillotine, Problem Solver, which solves problems by just ejecting tons of bullets in record time, and of course the Blackwall utilizing Haunted Gun Erebus, which you'll have to complete Phantom Liberty in a pretty specific way to get, but it's probably genuinely worth it. Also, if you're less on the side of an accurate shot person, then SMGs pretty much subscribe to the philosophy of quantity over quality, so you can just shoot in someone's general direction for long enough and hopefully you'll win. Plus, SMGs are available to use in cars, and burst firing on a Night City drive-by is again a major bonus to this class. Though the king of winning by firing in a general direction has got to go to shotguns, with a huge assortment of powerful weapons to choose, from the iconic Guts, formerly owned by Rebecca, to the utterly crazy Deserter, which engulfs you in flame on a kill, but is insanely powerful. But if you wanted something equally explosive to pair with the projectile arms, then pick up the Bajing Chong from the Ebenike after completing one of the endings, and just rain down hellfire. Though how exactly this qualifies as a shotgun is questionable. For the most part, this class though is the shotguns we know and love. Punchy, close-range single shots to be fired from point blank, which can be slow but also obliterate whatever is standing directly in front of you. If you've seen any of my other videos talking about shotguns, you probably know what I'm gonna say next, but I'm gonna say it again because it's a genuinely awesome and fun exploit. Start by scouring the weapon vendors around Night City until you find one of these bad boys. Named no doubt out after one of the 4 in-betweeners. Chuck it onto your shotgun of choice. I'd highly recommend Satara to also be able to shoot through walls, and after this, every leg shot should be an instant kill. Does it overall give shotguns an unfair advantage as a weapon class? Yes. Would they be lower on the list if this wasn't a thing? Probably not. I mean, they're pretty powerful as it goes and share a perk pool with LMGs, so it's not even like by speccing into them you're limiting yourself to close range with a shotgun-only build. Now we're getting into the best of the best classes, and the best overall melee class of the game is, without a doubt, probably Blades, comprised of a combination of machetes, chainswords, and predominantly katanas. These not only have the potential to make incredibly powerful builds, but they also look brilliant, with the likes of the red-edged errata pretty much feeling like a katana lightsaber. Speaking of which, I've got something very cool to show you. Wake the fuck up, samurai. We have a city to burn. Yes, I have a katana now. The company Blasters for Masters reached out to me recently and we realised we had a lot in common. Namely, I make videos about cyberpunk weapons and they make cyberpunk weapons. They were kind enough to send me a copy of their new RGB katana, which is basically errata, but can change colour to be whatever you want, from over 100 different styles via the use of an app. It looks awesome, both as a display piece and for cosplay, and it's not just katanas they do either, but hand-painted replicas of most, if not all, the cyberpunk weapons. So, if you'd like some cyberpunk replicas or something from another popular game, then check them out through my link below, and use the code SAMBRAM for 10% off on your order. I'm very selective when it comes to product promotion, but when the product in question is literally the topic of the video, how could I say no? But with that, back to in-game blades. A big thing I love about this class is that it can be effective at any level against some enemies, namely the ones also just using melee. But for the likes of the bloody ritual cyber psycho, say, so long as you get the countering down, you can do this literally whenever. And of course, if you spec into the blade tree, you can also deflect bullets. Admittedly, you can't deflect many until the stamina bar runs out, but it does add a layer of protection all the same. Also, the Flash and Thunderclap perk unlocks the same ability as the Mantis blades, albeit with a little less range, allowing us to leap from enemy to enemy and overall taking less damage as we navigate the terrain. Having ranked the whole class, I'd say the katanas are mostly the best choices here, though the Cutamatic Chainsword can serve as a fun, brutal alternative with some major 40k vibes. Otherwise, strong contenders are Geralt Squinblythe, straight from The Witcher, Scalpel, which works brilliantly with a Sandevistan. In fact, the whole katana class works best with a Sandevistan, and I have a whole build video detailing that. Otherwise, Byakko is definitely the best for crowds with its superhuman swinging speed, whilst errata burns enemies before administering crit damage. Again, check out my link below if you'd like a replica of that in real life. But overall, if you're going for a melee build, blades are not only a powerful choice, but also one with a lot of interesting options. Now it becomes pretty situational to the type of playstyle you're going with, and with all the attachable bonuses that can come with pistols, the headshot multipliers, silencers, perks, etc., they are definitively the best physical weapon for stealth, I think. Though with near 40 different models to choose from, it's inevitable that some at least would surface as the best of the best weapons in game. With Rogue's Pride, the easiest number 1 I've possibly ever ranked, but Her Majesty from Phantom Liberty a close second, and acquirable potentially earlier in the game. If you want to shoot silently through walls, then you'll have to complete Phantom Liberty a specific way to acquire Pariah, which can do this. And you know, I could keep listing pistols, but you're probably better off just at least skimming the timestamps of this video. So looking overall at this type, you might wonder how they could possibly compete with larger, higher caliber guns. And I think much like with throwing weapons, they win out largely on the creativity and cool, unique abilities. Power, tech, and smart are the 3 types of weapons we can use, and pistols are really the only class to offer a large selection on all 3. There's really something for every build in this type: a sidearm for netrunners, a last resort for tanky solos, or again a main arm for silent assassins. You can't really go wrong with the utility of the class, though the only thing is you will need to spec into their tree in cool to get the best out of them. And again, depending on how you structure your build, there may not be the point points to do that, which can limit them somewhat purely to stealthy assassin if looked at purely from a power perspective. But don't discount the fun element here. Sometimes it's okay to choose a weapon just for fun and to experience the creative effect that it has. It feels weird placing snipers so very high among all the types of weapon, and don't get me wrong, these obviously have a major issue at closer range because, well, they're snipers. But the fact that they can deal this much damage to max tac on very hard speaks major volumes as to their power. And I think the fact that they're designed to work at long distance provides built-in protection for the method of using them. Stay out of the fight equals live longer equals kill more enemies, which can be picked off with ease and a little accuracy thanks to the immense power of these guns. Wanna change it up a little, camp a bit less, run around a bit more? Then just take the smart weapon Ashura instead. It doesn't have quite the same range and you are beholden to the reach of the target lock, but the fact that you can just dash around dodging bullets and wait for the gun to lock on kind of mitigates that issue too. Now, one place snipers do majorly drop the ball is when it comes to stealth gameplay. Overwatch is the only silenced sniper, and it isn't great, in all honesty. Though to be fair, whilst it feels weird not having a good stealth sniper, I feel like if this was a thing too, then pistols would be out of their biggest job. Just like they were back when we could silence the Overture revolver. And so, while snipers do not really win at all in the stealth sector, they do win in open combat, and can carry you through endless waves of max tac thanks to staying out of the fight whilst also dispatching them quickly. The Grad is a great classic option, though going through walls in this style of play is obviously a huge bonus, for which the Nekamata, or iconic breakthrough variants, have you very much covered. Though the most powerful shot for shot that can't go through walls would, I think, be Rosetsu, which we can acquire through the Phantom Liberty campaign. Now, you might then say that overall there's no type of weapon optimized for open combat and stealth and every conceivable form of fight in one go, but actually there kind of technically is. Quickhacks. Not a physical weapon, but in a future where every body is also sporting tech, physical weapons aren't necessary. Quickhacks, though, are way more complicated to explain than any of the other weapon types. It's not simply a case of this one's better than that one, but rather more a question of which pair best together, with comboing various quickhacks applying all types of creative synergies. For example, Short Circuit and Cyberware Malfunction can both serve to amplify the potency of one another, whilst uploading a combo of Memory Wipe, Reboot Optics, and finally Sonic Shock will stealthily shut down any enemy instantly, cleaner and safer even than a headshot from Pride. A top-tier netrunner can create endless RAM feedback loops via a combo namely of Overclock and Synapse Burnout, though even at lower levels there's plenty of potent hacks out there to support you against enemies. Granted, until you unlock Epic Memory Wipe at about level 30, it's going to be much harder to drop everybody from stealth, but at the same time, netrunning can serve as a support mechanic as well as stand on its own 2 feet. Probably at its most powerful when you're just using specific hacking chains in a loop, but arguably more fun when paired alongside some smart weapons with colourful abilities. If you want to learn everything you need to know about quick hacking, then this video explains the workings of every quick hack, whilst this video then takes that and uses it to construct the optimal build for each cyberdeck. I absolutely love the netrunning mechanic in this game now, but it took these 2 videos for me to actually fully understand it. Then again, sometimes it can just be more fun to use a physical weapon. I mean in-game. So, comment below your favourite class of weaponry in Cyberpunk 2077 and why. And again, go check out Blasters for Masters' awesome replicas of all the weapons below. And as always, thank you to all the patrons for supporting the channel, keeping it alive, and enabling me to only promote products I think are genuinely relevant to the content and to you guys. I'm Bram, and have a Nova day, Choom.